Welcome back to the revision of modern user interface design. So, we had started our discussion with module 2, wherein we were discussing the user interface design process. In the previous video, we have already discussed the 7 commandments in designing an interface for people, and we have also seen the human characteristics in user interface design. So in this video, we shall be discussing about usability and the human considerations in the design of business system, followed by the techniques for determining the user requirements and the problems that we encounter in collecting these requirements. So today we begin our discussion with what do we mean by usability. Much of the development process usually focuses on the concept of system usability. So, therefore, usability is considered to be a quality attribute that assesses how easy an user interface can be. The term usability also refers to methods for improving the ease of use throughout the entire design process. So there are 5 quality components of a usable product. So usable product with context to our subject is the graphical user interface. So the 5 components of usability, quality components of usability are learnability, followed by efficiency, memorability, and the errors and satisfaction, followed by effectiveness. So let us effectiveness. So let us go through all these 5 components of usability one after the other. The very first one, being the learnability, says how easy is it for the users to accomplish the basic tasks for the first time they encounter the design. Similarly, efficiency describes that once the users have learned the design, how quickly can they perform the task using the system. So similarly, memorability stands for when the users return to the design after a long period of not using it, how easily can they re-establish proficiency with it. So similarly, errors. So, how many errors do the users make? How severe are these errors and how easily can they recover from these errors? Also, is a quality component of determining the usability of the system. Similarly, satisfaction. So, how pleasant is our design or our graphical user interface for use by human beings? So basically it is how pleasant is the GUI to be used by the user. So then we move on to the 5 E's. So we call these 5 E's as the dimensions of usability. So these 5 E's are nothing but effectiveness, efficiency, and the capacity of engaging the user, error tolerance, and ease to learn. So we go on exploring these 5 E's one after the other. So what does the meaning of effectiveness or being effective? So, the completeness and the accuracy with which the users achieve their goals stand for it being effective. Similarly, efficiency stands for the speed or the accuracy with which the user can complete their task. Similarly, engaging. So, engaging is nothing but the degree to which the tone and style of the interface makes the product more pleasing or satisfying to use. Similarly, error tolerant. So, how well is the design capable of preventing errors and helps to recover from those errors? And similarly, the Ease to Learn uh, tells us how well the product supports both initial orientation and the deepening of understanding of its capabilities. So all these five E's are known as the dimensions of usability. So whatever is the GUI that you design must support all these five E's. So here is an example. If suppose we have developed a GUI or an web interface for an online exhibition. So in this case, this particular website must satisfy the dimensions such as engaging, ease to learn, and being effective. So what does it mean? When we say this website has to be engaging, it means that it should encourage the visitor to become involved with the artist. So, so it means the pattern of navigation or navigating from one page to another page must be interesting and does not lead the user to frustration. And then ease to learn. So it means that this website must not be frustrating and tries to invite exploration. That is, the user can easily find out the ways to navigate to the other pages, and he also finds it easy to perform other operations like searching or maybe submitting the form or making the payments, etc. And similarly, the website must be effective, stating that it should prompt dialog boxes and as and when necessary, maybe offering the answers to the questions inquired by the user. So, information needs to be communicated properly in such sort of websites. And one more example for an if we have a registration update form. So this registration update form must satisfy among these five qualities the error tolerance, ease to learn, and efficiency. So what do we mean by this registration update form being error tolerant? So it must ensure a valid registration and can't cause problems using the site. And in case by chance if an error is committed by the end user, then the page must redirect him back to the initial step wherein he can further continue with a set of actions to recover from his errors. So similarly, the next quality component here is the ease to learn. Sorry, it's a dimension of usability. So it is ease to learn. So what do we mean by ease to learn? So not all users are tech savvy. So in that case, it be anybody who is trying to fill in the registration form. The registration form should be very easy to understand and fill in. It must not require any sort of training to be offered to the end user. It should be self sufficient to guide the end user fill in the form. Similarly, efficient. So, this registration form should be efficient, saying that it does not take longer time or the end user does not need to wait for a longer time and then calling for some technical support. So, all such things have to be kept in mind when we are trying to design a registration page. So, every GUI or every web interface that you are going to design must satisfy any almost for any five of these usability dimensions. So now moving on to how do we assess this usability? So usability assessment in the design process. So usability is one of an interface's most important qualities. For systems or products who use this discretionary such as websites, a difficult to use interface can choose people from stopping to use it. For business applications, whose use is usually mandatory, The result is the lowered productivity. So, usability assessment in the design process should begin very early in the stages of product development cycle and should be continually applied throughout the process. The assessment should always include the user's entire experience and the product's important components. So, common usability problems in any graphical system it be are the ambiguous menus and icons, the unclear step sequences, or more steps to manage the interface than to perform the tasks. Similarly, complex linkage between and within the applications and inadequate feedback and confirmation, followed by lack of system anticipation and intelligence and incorrect error messages helps tutorials and documentations, inadequate error messages and help that is offered to the end user. So web usability characteristics, particularly wasteful of people's time and often quite irritating, are considered to be the very first one, the visual clutter. So what do we mean by visual clutter? Maybe the lack of white spaces, meaning less graphics, and unnecessary wasteful decoration, which often turns the pages into noise. We consider it to be a kind of visual clutter. So, meaningful content remains hidden and which forces the user to waste his time in searching for what is relevant, and useless displayed elements are actually a form of visual noise. Therefore, our focus our focus as a designer should be to eliminate such things. So similarly, the next characteristics that is going to waste the people's time is the impaired information readability. So what do we mean by impaired information readability? So page readability diminishes because of its poor choice of typefaces, colors, and graphics, and sometimes sorry, use of innumerable typefaces and mixture of different colors creep the meaning from the screen. So a person's attention usually gets directed towards trying to understand why these differences exist instead of being focused towards identifying and understanding the page content. Similarly, the backgrounds that are brightly colored or contain pictures or patterns greatly diminish the legibility of overwritten. So, as a designer, always try to minimize or totally eliminate this impaired information readability. The other property or the other characteristic that basically leads to wastage of people's time is the incomprehensible components in the screen. So, some design elements give the user no clue about the function and the purpose of their existence. So, basically, some icons and graphics contain no text so as to explain what they do. Some buttons do not look at all like command buttons and give no visual indication that they are clickable. I'm giving you the examples of it. And similarly, languages often used are confusing because the developer tries to use his own design terminologies that are basically not at all meant for the user's understanding. So, the next characteristics is the annoying distractions. Elements constantly in motion, maybe scrolling all the time or scrolling text or looping continually and running some animations completely without meaningful content tries to tries to distract the user's attention and destroys the page's readability. Automatically presented music or other sounds interrupts one's concentration, as do non-requested pop-up windows, which must be removed, and wasting more of the user's time. So all such things simply lead to wastage of end users' time. So a person's senses are around constant attack by such activities, and the benefits afforded to one's peripheral vision are usually neglected. So, similarly, confusing navigations also create problems. So, our site's structures often resembles a maze of twisting pages into which the user always wanders and is quite soon lost if there is poor, little, or no organization existing among the pages. Navigation links lead to dead ends from which there is no return, or you are right back to the spot where you had initially started. So confusing navigations violate expectations and result in unexpected behaviors. So, similarly, the next characteristic here is inefficient navigation. So, what do we mean by inefficient navigation? A person must transverse context free pages to find what is meaningful. One whole screen might be used to point to another screen or another page, or sometimes a large graphics might be pasted onto the screen, which wastes the screen space and just simply adds to a page count. And more often, massive use of short pages with very little content in it also drives the user crazy. So, after inefficient navigation, the next property that we see is the inefficient operations. So, what do we mean by inefficient operations? Sometimes the time is wasted doing many things, just like page download times, which can be excessive, and we end up downloading pages that contain large graphics or maps in them and large chunky headlines or many colors in them that take longer time to download than the text. So, excessive information fragmentation can require navigation of long chains of links to reach relevant materials, so accelerating user disorientation. So, followed by it is the next characteristics, that is the information over, overload. So, poorly organized or large amounts of information can be overwhelming. Heavy mental loads can also result from making decisions concerning which links to follow and which to abandon, given the large number of choices available to the end user. So, followed by the next characteristics, which usually leads to wastage of end users' time, is the design inconsistency. So, it is expected that the site differences will and must exist because each website's owner tries to have his own identity. For the user's sake, however, some consistency must exist to permit a seamless flow between the sites. For example, the industry practice of using standard link colors for unvisited sites is blue, and the visited sites become purple and is often violated. We assume this is often violated, so this may force the user to remember different color meanings in different places. And this also causes confusion between the links and underlined text. So, an underlined text may simply be imagined to be a link by the end user using the interface. Thus, a web is a form of graphical user interface, and GUI guidelines should always be followed. So the next characteristics is the outdated or the undated information. So outdated or the undated information usually destroys the site's credibility in the minds of many users, and therefore the website or the interface will now be considered as useless. So therefore a useless site is not very usable. So all these things are connected to the usability characteristics.